so exciting to be in this enormous theater. To those of you who have come to the Oslo Freedom Forum in Norway, this is such a change of venue for us. So much has happened in the last 18 months. Unfortunately, we have not been able to gather, and in those 18 months, a lot of terrible things have happened around the world. If you consider just one example, Belarus, a democratic upswing and an election rigged by the dictator to not allow Sviatlana, I can never get the name, Tsikhanouskaya, the actual legitimate leader of Belarus. We're going to be hearing from her later, and we have a very specific start with that because it's going to be done via video. So, which is why it's so important for us to be in our seats and be on time. We're going to be hearing from DJ Switch from Nigeria shortly. She's going to be talking about a movement against police brutality in the largest country in Africa, a place where she herself has been targeted by the military for her activism. We're going to be talking yet again as an organization, and we have been for 10 years talking about the oppression of the Uyghurs in China, something that the world is finally beginning to wake up to. We're going to be hearing from Akida Pulat, whose own mother was a target of this genocide and whose family has gone through terrible, terrible suffering as a result. In these 18 months of coronavirus, a virus made all that much worse because of the Chinese Communist Party's not telling the world what was going on, not admitting what had happened, let alone allowing people to investigate the origin and the true damage that originated inside China. In that time, other regimes, other governments have used the coronavirus as an excuse to repress, as an excuse in the case of Hungary, in the case of Viktor Orban, to suspend a parliamentary system. We even see this creeping into democracies. It's quite extraordinary if you look at the footage of what's going on in Australia. To those of us who fight for civil and political rights, it's quite remarkable to see a population so willing to give up their freedom for this idea of security. And it brings me to the fact that we're here in Miami, and some people have been critical of us having an event. And as I told some of my colleagues yesterday, are we having a super spreader event? Yes, we're trying to super spread the idea of civil and political rights. We're trying to super spread the concept. Being in Miami is, for us, we feel extremely welcome. And in fact, in a few moments, I'm going to welcome both the Republican and the Democrat mayors of both Miami and Miami Beach, respectively, because we believe that the struggle against authoritarianism worldwide is one that should include people from across the political and ideological spectrum. We have no affiliations in that sense from our office. We are very interested in protecting those rights for everyone to be able to express themselves, regardless of where they are politically. The fact of being in Miami is also interesting because Miami is a city that is so central to the discussion about what's going on in the longest running totalitarian system in this hemisphere. And of course, I'm speaking about the family dictatorship of the Castros in Cuba. And recently, if you were to read the news and the way it was covered, whether it was Bloomberg or the New York Times or the Washington Post, they covered it as Cubans are rising up against the pandemic response of the Cuban government. There's an ongoing discussion about the pandemic response, the things the Cuban government did or did not do during the pandemic. But nobody who was marching in Cuba was yelling down with coronavirus. They were chanting libertad. And if you read the signs, They say, down with the dictatorship. You know, in speaking with a Cuban political prisoner who spent 22 years in a Cuban prison, we were having this discussion a few days ago, and he was telling me, once you've tasted that, and most of those people marching were born into a dictatorship, so they've never actually tasted freedom. Those who've been lucky enough to be able to exit Cuba since Cuba started allowing international travel have been able to taste it as well. But once you start tasting freedom, he says you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And his view is, if it's not the end, it's definitely the beginning of the end. So we're thrilled to be in Miami for that reason, and in solidarity with several Cuban speakers such as Tania Bruguera, an artist who will also be speaking here at the Oslo Freedom Forum. I don't know if you noticed on the way in the remarkable exhibits that we have from members of our community. Because ultimately, the Oslo Freedom Forum isn't so much about who the speakers are or who gets to be on the stage. It's also about some of the most amazing people, former speakers, and other members of our community who are in the audience. And it really is, what this is, despite the fact that we are dealing with so much trauma, despite the fact that we are addressing so many horrific occurrences, and really, in some cases, sad and very jarring stories. What this is also just a celebration of life. It's a celebration of life, it's a celebration of love, it's a celebration of liberty. If you consider the three things, safety, love, liberty, that's what we are trying to promote here. And those are the very three things that every dictatorship wants to make sure their people don't have. No safety, no love. In fact, in North Korea, there is no such word for romantic love, and no liberty. So we stand against that. And even though it appears very dark and that the world is headed in the wrong direction, we believe that civil society is the answer, that the answer will come from us. It's definitely not going to come from the tech sector, a tech sector that, despite their wonderful pronouncements about don't be evil, and their pronouncements about let's believe in freedom of expression, yet they engage in things like removing Alexei Navalny's app from the Apple iPhone. You can't get it on the App Store. So you will be hearing from Alexei Navalny, because we have a speech that has been smuggled out from the prison camp where he is held in Russia. He is in prison after the failure of Vladimir Putin in trying to poison him. And so we will be hearing from Alexei Navalny. But back to the tech sector, that despite their pronouncements about an open society, has really shown that they are not there, that they do not care. You know, the theme of this Oslo Freedom is ignite. And so many people here are interested in igniting something, in starting something, in carrying a movement. One such person who a few weeks before he was murdered was at the Oslo Freedom Forum was Jamal Khashoggi. And you may or may not have seen the film The Dissident, which we played outside in that remarkable outdoor theater. Jamal understood this, and Jamal took on the Saudi dictatorship with $5,000 and an army of students who wanted to ensure that on Twitter, the Saudi regime did not have communicational hegemony. And he paid for that with his life. But with $5,000 and a group of students, he took on a trillionaire, and they wrestled away the control that they had of communicational hegemony over social media. We have here with us the fiancé of Jamal Khashoggi, who waited outside that consulate of Saudi Arabia in Turkey while the horrific murder occurred. So we have, again, a remarkable family of people that we've brought together. And we bring them together with this idea of celebrating them. No matter the outlook, we believe that we can make a difference, and we will continue doing what we're doing. Failure is definitely not an option when it comes to liberty. So with that, despite the fact that we are in Miami and we couldn't be in Norway because Norway was under somewhat strict lockdown procedures, which ironically they very recently opened up, and they've now downgraded the coronavirus to the status of a common cold. So we will definitely be back in Norway next year, but we will definitely consider being involved in Miami in some capacity. So if you are from here, please, this is an invitation from us to be part of this community and to be part of what we're doing. So with that, I'm going to open and invite the Foreign Minister of Norway to give us a message. Thank you.
Friends and partners, human rights defenders, journalists, artists, and entrepreneurs. For 13 years, courageous human rights advocates have taken part in this forum with one key objective: to discuss the best ways to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms. Rights and freedoms that are essential to our societies are coming under increasing pressure. We're currently experiencing a global decline in liberal democracy, and the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated a trend where leaders expand their powers at the expense of fundamental freedoms and individual rights. Many leaders have tightened their grip on media and the civic space. But democratic backsliding doesn't necessarily mean a decline in support for democracy. On the contrary, the many voices like your own show us that the opposite is the case. That there are still many of us who will defend democracy. I welcome the theme of this year's forum, Truth Ignited. It speaks to the lived reality of many of today's participants, people who have taken a personal risk to speak truth to power, and in doing so, having stood up for human rights. It is your courage that inspires us to continue our effort. Freedom of expression is essential to uncover human rights violations and to ensure that other human rights are being respected. Freedom of expression is the foundation on which all other democratic freedoms rest. And sadly, freedom of expression cannot be taken for granted anywhere in the world. Not 13 years ago and not today. As long as freedom of expression is under threat across the world, we cannot and will not reverse our course. That is why Norway recently launched a renewed international strategy to promote freedom of expression. And in this forum, this is relevant in relation to many of the country situations that will be discussed. The strategy outlines how Norway will work to safeguard the rights of all people to freedom of expression. We will continue to protect journalists, artists, human rights defenders, and those who speak up against the abuse of power. When crimes are committed, we will work to ensure that no stone is left unturned in the quest for justice. We renew our commitment to combating intolerance, hate speech, and discrimination. And we will strive to ensure access for all to reliable information. People must be well informed in order to participate in democratic processes. In Norway's view, respect for human rights is essential to achieving sustainable development and implementing the 2030 Agenda. We'll continue to push for states to comply with their human rights obligations, and we will maintain our strong support to our partners on the ground who are working tirelessly to promote democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Dear friends, democracy in its truest sense is by the people and for the people. And a true democracy where everyone has the same opportunity to participate in society cannot exist without freedom of expression. I'm confident that you will continue to grow your communities and networks, expanding the space for individual freedoms around the globe. I wish you every success with your discussions. Thank you.
Now, please give a warm welcome to the mayors of Miami and Miami Beach. So,
you're on that side. Okay. Okay.
thank you. Thanks
Sure,
so much
thank
for
you very much.
welcoming us. Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
it. Appreciate it.
Sure
so much.
thing.
Thank you. I'm Dan Gelber, and it's my real pleasure to welcome you to our city. I know you probably would expect it to be in Oslo right now, but we'll take you this year and every year if you'll come back. And let me just say this before I turn it over to my really good friend, Mayor Suarez. You know, this is a right place to be, because I think our community really appreciates, because it's felt it, the boot of authoritarianism and tyranny. So many people in our community come from places where the freedom is just not something that they can even taste. And they jump on rafts at great peril. They jump on rickety boats from countries like Cuba and Haiti, and they come here because they experience it here. And it is it is one of those things that bind our community. And although we're at different parties, we're great friends because I think we share a common belief that freedom is the elemental need of all people, and we want to express it here every single day. Mayor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may not know it, but we are twins.
Whoa. Before, after, or after, before? I don't know.
And you still may not be able to figure out which one is a Republican and which one is the Democrat. But I'll tell you a funny story that a mayor once told me, Bill Peduto from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He said to me, you know, Mr. Mayor, in America, there's 3 political parties. I said, really, Bill? What are they? He goes, there's Republicans, there's Democrats, and there's mayors. And I think that's very true. And in a city and in a county like ours, we work together for the betterment of our community. And we think first of how we solve problems, and we think less about what party is responsible for solving them or creating them. But as the mayor said, and he gave me quite a balance of time, so thank you for that. As the son of Cuban exiles, where my grandparents, my grandfather was jailed by the Castro regime. His brother died in a Cuban jail, and his other brother was also jailed. The concept of human rights and liberty is one that intimately affects me on a personal level. When you see the stories of Alexei Navalny and his struggle for human rights in Russia, and you see what is going on in Venezuela and so many other parts of the world, you can't help be compelled to think about the opportunities that we have in this country and why this country has given us one of the most essential freedoms that we have, the freedom of our future. And I keep thinking over and over again, what do these dictatorships take? Well, they take away wealth, they take away property, but the most impactful thing that they take is away is your future. We all believe in this country that tomorrow could be better, and that our children can have a better earth than the one that we have received. And I think these dictatorships are robbing millions and tens of millions of people of that very dream. And so here in Miami, as a diaspora for many of these different ethnic groups, we hope that we try to form a more perfect society, a more perfect city, where we allow people in this city to express themselves, to feel comfortable, to feel confident, and to have a very successful future. That's the kind of city that we want to create, regardless of party. That's the kind of city that we fight for every single day. And we know that as mayors, we have a responsibility that many mayors may not have in the world, which is to talk about these things. And so it's wonderful to have this event here, and we hope that it stays here, despite the fact that we know that it will return to its home in many, many ways. But we're thankful to have an opportunity to express our personal story, our personal journey of freedom, and how things like Bitcoin, something that I've been very much associated with, can help along the journey of providing freedom of economic opportunity for those in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Russia, China, and other parts of the world. And so that's a journey that I embrace and that I will enjoy, helping people in those countries find the kind of economic freedom and the kind of freedom of the future that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great time. Thanks, Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good morning. Look at that. I've often heard that it is best to start these types of talks with a joke to make you people feel comfortable and relaxed. And so I have no such plans. What I do have, though, is a clip from a live recording I made on the 20th of October, 2020. Please, viewer discretion is advised.
They're shooting us! They shot two people! Oh my goodness! See somebody else. Everybody look at this. These are the bullets that were falling by our side, that were dodging bullets.
My name is Obianuju Catherine Ude. Don't worry, you can call me DJ Switch. I'm from Enugu State, which is in the southeast region of Nigeria. For years, young Nigerians like myself with interesting hairstyles, ripped jeans, iPhones, nice cars, have been harassed, extorted, illegally detained, tortured, raped, and killed by the Nigerian police. Specifically, a unit of the Nigerian police called SARS. SARS stands for Special Anti-Robbery Squad, and trust me, they truly are a special bunch. A special breed of armed robbers in uniform. A special group and gang of rapists with a badge. A special crowd of murderers with a license to carry a gun. For as long as I can remember, we begged and petitioned the Nigerian government to put an end to this corrupt unit. And to their credit, they complied, or at least it seemed like they complied. First, with the disbandment of SARS in 2016, then again in 2017, 2018, 2019. I know it's an abusive relationship. 2020, and I know we all won't be forgetting 2020 in a hurry. As the coronavirus ravaged the globe, back home in Nigeria, we were more afraid of another type of virus, SARS. On the 3rd of October, a video surfaced online where SARS officers shot a young man and fled with his Lexus SUV. We were outraged. But this was followed by the gunning down of an up-and-coming Nigerian musician. I'm a musician. Could have been me. At this point, the hashtag #EndSARS was trending all over the world. And thanks to Nigeria's biggest celebrities and artists, influencers who said, enough is enough, it is time we speak up. And so by the 8th of October, the streets of Nigeria were filled with young men and women protesting police brutality, and I was one of them. But it is the 20th of October, 2020, that has brought me here today. On that very horrible day, the Nigerian army, sanctioned by the Nigerian government, stormed the Lekki toll gate, and this is a major roadway in Lagos State, by the way. No warning, no dialogue. Soldiers opened fire on unarmed, peaceful protesters with live ammunition. We cried, we braced, and we started to sing the national anthem, just with the hopes that they recognized we're not their enemy. It made no difference. As I laid on the floor, I remember a young man, he just jumped on top of my body and he was screaming, "Cover her, cover her." I couldn't really make sense of what the whole thing was about. He was struck by a bullet on his lower back. I genuinely believe he saved my life, and I don't even know who he is. I don't even know why I didn't run, to be honest. At that time, I thought it was the end. And so my instinct at the moment was show everybody what's going on. You're going to die here today. And so I pulled out my phone, went to Instagram, started live broadcasting this madness. Viewers on the live helped us call ambulances, but the soldiers refused the ambulance's entry. And so some of us had to turn into instant surgeons in an attempt to remove the bullet from the leg of a protester. Eventually, the shooting stopped, and we observed that some of the soldiers were picking up their shells, I believe in an attempt to hide evidence of this crime. And so we scampered around to pick the shells that we could find in an attempt to have evidence of this crime. And this was while other soldiers were dumping bodies onto their trucks. They left, and we felt a sense of victory, Some can't really explain it. We were happy and angry, relieved but in pain. But unfortunately, after being on Instagram Live for so long, my phone battery died. Because not too long after, another phase of attack was upon us. But this time it was the Nigerian police. And they came in guns blazing as well. And so we ran. We took the injured to a nearby hospital and the others to a church. The church apparently had been on the live and they had offered us refuge. By the next morning, soldiers raided the hospital looking for me. And I owe a great deal of gratitude and thanks to a friend and colleague who had called me earlier and said, put off the location on your phone and leave that hospital as soon as possible. And so it was barely 15 minutes after I left. But it didn't end there. My boss and his wife got threatening phone calls. I couldn't go home to where I lived because we got reports of strange men lurking around my apartment complex. I haven't gone home, actually, since the 20th of October, 2020. Speaking of home, I'm from a large family of 8, 5 boys, 3 girls, with very opposing characters, I tell you. I'm the last, with a sprinkle of last child crazy. But I remember my parents, they worked really hard to provide us with basic things: food, education, healthcare, security, allowances. All while teaching us to love and respect each other's differences. On the other hand, Nigeria is home to over 200 million brothers and sisters with different cultures and tribes and faiths and beliefs. Things and differences that the government has used for the longest time to pit us against each other. But the NSAS movement swept that away, even if it was just for a time being. I witnessed protesters collaborating and helping each other. Protesters giving food and water to the same police who's been killing us off every day. Others provided security. Another group provided funds that were donated to them, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, for legal and medical attention to protesters who needed it. This is the real Nigeria. But the Nigerian government, much like an irresponsible parent, failed to see the opportunity as a learning curve, to listen to the cries of its quote-unquote children. Instead, they chose to deny these events and also moved swiftly to silence us. Starting with the Nigerian Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed. And yes, you heard me right. The Nigerian Minister of Information, our very own spin doctor. Yeah, his first name is Lai. It's inevitable, right? The pun is begging me. Lai called the shooting a fabrication of a massacre without bodies. He said I was a purveyor of fake news with the intent of tarnishing the nation's image, that I am a terrorist, amongst other things. The Nigerian army called the shooting fake and that I had made the whole thing up with a green screen. Yes, I have plans of heading to Hollywood after this speech. You know, 15 people died on the 20th of October, and not a single government official, police, or army personnel has been brought to book. 15, at least, all while singing the national anthem. As an artist and a DJ, I listen to music a lot, all the time. And I'm reminded of the legend, the artist, Fela Anikulapo Kuti. He was known for speaking truth to power with his art. And I'm reminded of his 1977 song titled Zombie. Here, Fela likens the Nigerian military to mindless zombies following idiotic orders. It was relevant then, it is relevant today, and it most likely will be relevant tomorrow, in the future. The same future that they say is in the hands of the leaders of tomorrow. But what we have tomorrow are recycled leaders of today who have failed to provide an enabling environment for young leaders to thrive and contribute. No, but they chose instead to kill us all off, one by one. This might sound outrageous to you, and you might wonder why. And I'll tell you. Our leaders are afraid. It's as simple as that. They're afraid of a thinking, an innovative, a collaborative, and a working Nigeria. They're afraid of every young Nigerian who, against all odds, have made it for themselves. They are afraid of a me, the coconut head generation, as we like to call ourselves. We're hard-headed, we're not easily deceived by propaganda, and we stand up to our oppressors. And while we may not do this all the time because wahala no dey finish, as we like to say back home, I think there's a Nigerian in the crowd. Well, what it means, though, is that the problems never end. And while I understand that we have to take a break to put food on the table, to at least secure our mental health, know this. Corruption, tyranny, abuse of power do not go on a break. And so today I'm choosing to use my voice and my talent to push for the things that we ought to have. And I want to ask you all, these fine people, to please join me and support my vision for promoting democracy, human rights values, and equality through arts. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, everyone. Last night, I was watching the film about Jamal Khashoggi. People were watching it, sitting down and paying attention to the film. I just walked out, and I cried. And I said to my husband, if the FBI didn't stop the kidnapping plot, I would have been the main character of one movie, people talking about me, or some journalists coming here talking about me. Yes, you all escaped from quarantine, hugging each other, getting together because of coronavirus, but for 8 months, I was escaping from a more deadlier virus, which is called the Islamic Republic. And they were trying to kidnap me from New York, from Brooklyn, from my house. So the FBI just, they came to my house and they said, you have to move from this house. You're not safe here. I was joking. And I was like, wait a minute. We have been receiving threats for years and years as a human rights activist and journalist I'm not scared. But they showed me photos of my life, my stepchildren, my husband, my garden, my private moment, and saying that the Islamic Republic hired a private investigator to kidnap me from New York. And I was like, wait a minute, the reason that I left Iran, because I didn't feel safe, and I used to feel safe in America. But this is the truth which happened to me, and you might think this is only me. Before getting to the story of it's not only me, and there are many Iranians who were targeted by the regime, I want to tell you that who I am. I'm not a criminal. But in the eyes of the Islamic Republic, of course, I'm a master criminal. Because as you hear, I have too much voice, I have too much hair, and I am too much of a woman. And I am the biggest enemy of the Islamic Republic as a woman. Yes, they wanted to make me isolated. They want to make me feel miserable. I'm a campaigner against compulsory hijab. I was a parliamentary journalist in Iran. They kicked me out because I was making too much troubles for the government. But they thought if they kick me out from my country, they can keep me silent. But I launched a campaign against compulsory hijab for freedom of choice. Millions of women joined my campaign, White Wednesdays. And then the government arrested 29 women only in one day, just because of peacefully walking unveiled and saying that I want to be free to choose what I want to wear. That was the day that the government felt that I'm a danger. I'm a dangerous woman. There are so many backlash. They tried to keep me silent. They made a new law saying that if anyone sent videos to Masih Alinejad will be charged up to 10 years prison. Can you believe that? I got bombarded. This time by videos from mothers who lost their children in Iran protests, holding the pictures of their children and saying that, who killed my son? Who killed my daughter? So I simply gave them a voice. And that scared the government. So they're scared of me and millions of other women and men who get together and send videos to me. That makes me a master criminal. But the FBI told me that they did everything to keep silent. They went after my brother. They arrested my brother. They put him in prison for 2 years. They interrogated my mother. They brought my sister on TV to disown me publicly. I was watching her. She was disowning me on TV. That didn't keep me silent, as you hear me. That's why they were trying to kidnap me here in Brooklyn. They were trying to take me to a speedboat to take to Venezuela, in third country, and kidnap me from there to Iran. You think it's like a scary movie, no? It's like part of Hollywood movie. No, this is our history. Taking, kidnap, hostage, arresting, executing, murdering is in the DNA of the Islamic Republic. And it's not only me. There are many Iranians. One of them, which I'm waiting for the picture, come on, Ruhollah Zam. Anytime when I talk about Ruhollah Zam, my heart, Ruhollah Zam, the first picture, he was a journalist like me. He was in Paris. The government tricked him from Paris to Iraq. And they kidnapped him from Iraq to Iran. Then they executed him. Father of 2 children. Jamshid Sharmad, another Iranian. Right now that I'm talking to you, he was kidnapped. He's in prison in Iran. Another one, Habib is in prison. Feridun Farrokhzad, a poet who got assassinated in Germany by the regime. Shapur Bakhtiar, former minister, and many, many other Iranians. Don't think that you're safe. Right now that I'm talking to you, many dual national citizens who were like a tourist in Iran, they got arrested, they are in prison. So the regime are using them like bargaining chip. What bothers me, the whole world, international community, are desperate to get a deal with such a regime. What has scared the government, it's our unity. Don't think this is about Masih. This is about Ruhollah Zam. This is about Jamshid Sharmad. This is about dual national citizen. This is happening to all human beings. The Islamic Republic is like coronavirus. Taliban is like coronavirus. They're not going to stay in the Middle East. If you don't fight and support your own sisters and brothers in the Middle East, you have to deal with these dictators, these murderers in Europe, in America. Together, we are stronger. Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'd like to, if I may, tell you a story. Your story begins on protest day. You raise your fist and lead the crowd in a chant. Something true, a truth ignited, if you will. And as Garry Kasparov told us last night, because it's true, it poses a danger to those in power. Now, while you may have the truth on your side, you know, as we all know, that those in power who are threatened by these truths have something just as powerful on theirs: surveillance technology. And sure enough, an agent of the state has seen you and wants to figure out who you are. But you've taken precautions. You wear a face mask, you use an encrypted messaging app. And when you leave the protest, you take a long, meandering route, just in case you're being followed. But you're being followed all the same. Not by a human or a drone or any other one single physical surveillance device. You're being followed by software. And trust me when I say this, that is much, much worse. Here's how it works. The agent pulls up the software and finds that initial image of you and clicks a button marked Investigate. And using some fairly simple computer vision, the system essentially finds the most distinctive features in your image, particularly that very lovely pink shirt, and cross-references it against all of the other surveillance camera feeds in the city, looking for matches. In this way, it essentially tracks your every move as you come into view of one surveillance camera and then the next, generating a perfect map of your route, your own digital trail of breadcrumbs. But you didn't go home. You're obviously smarter than that. You went to the house of a friend, someone sympathetic to the cause. But the agent obviously isn't finished either. And with one more click of the investigate button, the system, using that home address where you ended up, brings up your friend's profile. His name, all of his details, and a heat map showing all of the places in the city where he spends most time. Your friend's digital trail of breadcrumbs. Another click of the investigate button brings up all of the people who live at those places, who has a criminal record, maybe who's been named in the same criminal complaint as your friend, anyone he's interacted with on social media. And you can be sure that he'll probably be receiving a visit from some very unwelcome guests not too long from now. But the agent's after you. And with one more click of the investigate button, using that same basic computer vision, the system cross-references that initial image of you at the protest to all of the images that are available for all of the people that are in your friend's network. You are, of course, one of those people. And in a few seconds, it finds a match. And there you are. Your profile comes up. All your personal details, your social media history, your criminal record if you have one, your own heat map showing all of the places where you spend most time, going back years of your life. A list of all of your associates, the whole movement laid bare. And on top of all that, a predictive risk score, indicating your likelihood of committing a crime sometime in the near future. A score that in this case is high enough to serve as the basis for a search warrant on your home. The agent has you. It only took a few minutes and 4 clicks of the investigate button. Click, 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 click. Later that evening, you're back home. Because you took every possible precaution, you feel like you're finally safe. And then you hear a sound that nobody wants to hear at their door in the middle of the night. Knock, 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 knock. Now, in case you're wondering, this is not the plotline of some fictional Hollywood thriller like Enemy of the State, although I highly encourage you to watch that film. This technology that I have described is absolutely real. It often goes by the innocuous name of multi-intelligence fusion. It is proliferating rapidly across the globe, often in the guise of smart city modernization efforts sold by companies like Microsoft, Oracle, NEC, Palantir, and Genentech. Now, the story that these companies want us to hear is about how this technology can be used to, I don't know, find a child who is being kidnapped. That's certainly the story they always tell me. But today I wanted to tell you a different story. A story that is, in all likelihood, all the more plausible and just as important. In telling you this story, I promise I have not exaggerated. This technology is extraordinarily powerful. In New York City, for example, the NYPD's surveillance fusion system, DAS, has in recent years contributed to more criminal charges than any other single device in that city's vast surveillance arsenal. In China, surveillance fusion is the cornerstone of the government's campaign to surveil 100% of public space and 100% of its citizens 24 hours a day. As I understand it, the fine city of Miami also has some of these technologies in its real-time crime centers. And yet, unlike the traditional weapons of authoritarianism with which we are all too well familiar. Surveillance fusion doesn't rely on any of the old techniques, the stakeouts outside your home, the networks of informants, the wiretaps on your phone. It works by bringing together all of the information that is already freely available about us. The digital breadcrumbs that we leave behind simply by existing in the modern world. Those heat maps, for example, are built using commercially available cell phone location data. Data that anybody, even you or I, can buy on the open market. The algorithms at the heart of this software that correlate all of these disparate data points, tracking us from one data set to the other, are largely derived from the same algorithms that are used to track us online for digital marketing, to serve us ads. And in telling you this story, I've only shared a sample of what this technology is capable of when it brings all of that information together. As you can imagine, it is shrouded in secrecy, but the little that we do know about it is very troubling, terrifying, if you will. And you can be certain that there is a lot more going on behind that thick veil of secrecy. You can also be certain, and trust me, you do not have to be an expert to see this, that it is going to get a lot more powerful in the years ahead, as every new source of data comes online and inevitably gets plugged into the system, as every new algorithm is developed to track us across these data points with increasing persistence, relentlessness, and intrusiveness. At this point, I can imagine what some of you in the audience are probably thinking right now. Oh, shit. But the existence of technologies like this is why we fight to protect those last small remaining sacrosanct spaces of privacy where the seeds of liberty and freedom can only germinate. After all, we raise our fist not because nobody is watching. We raise it in spite of the fact that we know someone is always watching, man or machine, following us everywhere we go. And we're never going to stop doing that. We're never going to stop. We're going to keep going. It's in our nature. We have no choice. But I might suggest, maybe next time, wear a different colored shirt. Thank you so much.
Participants to please wear your mask while in the theater. Thank you for your cooperation.
ويلي كل صلاة ست شوك
from 2011 at a poetry reading in Ramadi, the capital of Anbar city, province where I'm from. The video ends with Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. These were the last words of a suicide bomber just before he detonated his vest. I was there. I remember making eye contact with him and seeing a kind of fear that I'd never seen before. I jumped behind the wall, and that wall saved my life. I was lucky to survive. The person who was filming did not. My name is Ahmed Albasheer, and this is my story and the story of modern Iraq. Humor is very important to us Iraqis, as you'll see. After surviving a suicide bombing, my cousin Mustafa cracked a joke at me. He told me it was a shame that I survived because how much he'd been looking forward to eating the meat served at my funeral. When we Iraqis die, we serve really good food at the funerals. Let's go back to 2002. I was finishing high school and obsessed with dressing like Kevin from the Backstreet Boys. It was about to be dark time for Iraq and for my fashion sense. I later enrolled in Baghdad University to become an accountant. As with most of my problems, and this is true for almost most men, you can blame my dad for that. He wanted me to study theology, but that wasn't really for me. I wanted to go to the art school. One night, one of his friends complained about business. It is so hard to find good accountant these days. He wasn't speaking like that. He wasn't from Texas. He was from Bar. The only thing that rivals God in my father's eyes is a business opportunity for the family. He was very excited for me, and I was not consulted. But accounting it was, even though I wanted to go to the art school. Less than a year into college, my heart was invaded by 6 girls at the same time. Every girl who says hi, I fall in love with her and I propose. I know 6 a lot, we only do 4, but 6. I wanted to break that law. So my heart was invaded by 6 girls at the same time, and Iraq was invaded by the United States of America. Rumor had it been that we were going to be a new US state, but there were already so many stars on the flag. How would it fit a new one? Months later, I'll never forget being in a taxi driven by an old man. And I was telling him how much I was excited about the American occupation. He just looked at me inside his Toyota Crown 79 and said, son, he's not from Texas, son, from now on, 8 p.m. will always be much better than 9 p.m. What did that even mean? Over time, things seem to be getting worse. In April 2005, I was kidnapped by one of the militias who had infiltrated the police. At random, militias would kidnap a bunch of people and hold them for a ransom. They kept me for so long because my dad was too cheap. Kill him then, I won't pay a penny. I can produce others like him. You know, I have 8 others, I don't care. They were upset with him and took it out on me. I told them my daddy issues are not my fault. I would give you the money. Maybe my dad would have paid my ransom if I became an accountant. Kids, listen to your parents. I was lucky I only got beaten and not truly tortured, and on the bright side, I lost almost 40 pounds. Strict diet. I gained it back again, actually. As I told you, humor is very important to us Iraqis. I try to make my jailers laugh so they can see me as a human, or even as their friend, so they don't take an electric drill to my skin. After 38 days, I was released. And get this, the same guy who kidnapped me came to my shop later to say hi. So yes, I was punched for 38 days and told so many jokes that my captors came by later to say they miss me. So the words from the taxi driver before came back to me in the middle of the sectarian war in 2006. 8 p.m. will always be much better than 9 p.m. Was the feeling of hopelessness when you realize that the golden days of your country are behind you. And every single day is going to be worse than the one before. And there's nothing you can do about it. The invading coalition policies were a disaster to Iraq. It allocated government positions based on identity and not merit. It disbanded the entire Iraqi army, sending hundreds of thousands of armed men into poverty with no way of providing for their families. People with no government experience or people who hadn't been in Iraq for decades were put in charge. I could talk to you about a lot of tragedies from this time. A mortar falling on my house with my brother inside and us having to wipe off his remains from the walls in order to have something to bury. My father was truly tortured by Al-Qaeda, and he died a year later of a kidney failure. After every incident, my cousin Mustafa, you remember him from his joke after I survived the suicide bombing, was there to bring me out of my depression with his unkillable sense of humor. Humor is very important to us Iraqis. I told Mustafa it seems that the only bad things in my life happens in April. So he told me this: next April, don't worry, it's going to be fine. He died in May just to prove that point to me, when he accidentally stepped on an IED. And yes, we ate meat at his funeral. You probably want to know what I was up to while I was getting my heart broken like this. I became a TV reporter during this bloody civil war. There was less demand for an accountant, you know. I decided to leave Iraq to go to Jordan. I couldn't keep doing that. It was for my own mental health. I knew Al-Qaeda wanted me dead for my journalism. The first episode of Albasheer Show came out in August 2014. The same month, Mustafa's father, my uncle, was killed by ISIS. We risked discussing sectarianism, a taboo, when Iraqi forces were mobilizing against ISIS, which was almost a sectarian war again. But our risk paid off. We had 1 million views that week for our first episode ever. We were the only ones independent of any political parties. We made fun of the government. Every topic was fair game. We made fun of the government, we made fun of ISIS, we made fun of politicians, of militias, we made fun of your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, only when they deserved it, of course.
من أرض الأحرار أهلا بكم في البشير. أهلا بكم في البشير. أهلا بكم في أهلا بكم في أهلا بكم في أهلا بكم في البشير. أهلا بكم في البشير. أهلا وسهلا بكم في البشير. أهلا بكم في البشير. ساحة تحرير أهلا بكم. أهلا وسهلا بكم. ما حد قاد ثورة شمالية. ما حد قاد ثورة شمالية. ما حد قاد ثورة شمالية.
That was our audience. We were among the voices that causing millions strong protests throughout all of Iraq's major cities in 2019 and 2020. Every Friday, our show was broadcast on a big screen in Tahrir Square during sit-ins calling for an end to the corrupt system. The government tried to scramble the signal, but I guess their heads were too scrambled. I wish I could say that's the end of the speech, a happy ending, when Iraqi new generation is taking over and Iraq is living happily ever after, and the new generation is ruling with the era of harmony and security. No, sorry. I'm not Iraq's Prince Charming. Al-Bashir Show didn't cause Iraq's happily ever after. Iraq is not a democracy today, and here's why. Tens of thousands of people have been kidnapped by the same militias who are controlling Iraq today, and none of us know what's happened to them since 2016. The political elite has created a political system that allows them to stay in power forever. You want to open a restaurant, a store, you need the support of one of the parties, and you need to pay them off too. The political parties, they take the public budget and they fund themselves off. There is corruption in every area of the government. Nearly 800 protesters have been died since October 2019, the protest began. 30,000 protesters have been injured, thousands fled the country. These brave young activists, men and women alike, face brutal repression and fired at by the government and militias that countries like Iran are funding. Free elections and freedom of speech, these are real jokes in Iraq. There are no one political opposition party that remains unrepressed inside Iraq, and there is no independent voices that been free inside Iraq. Let me be clear. I'm not asking you to come save Iraq. That did not turn out well when we tried that in 2003, no? We can do it ourselves. Please just pay attention to what's happening in Iraq and understand the history of how Iraq came to be this way today. Remember, Iraq is not a playground for other political to settle their country, for other countries to settle their political score on. Power politics always come to the expense of the people. We are so tired of it. And don't just blindly throw money at your problems either. There are projects in Iraq that need your support. Any money thrown at the government will just line the pockets of corrupt parties and militia groups. But there are projects will need your support and help. But above all, I have so much hope with the new generation of Iraqi people, who I truly believe that they will build a new country and maybe they will live happily ever after. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ahmed Albasheer. That was my story and the story of modern Iraq. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the opening theater session of our first ever Oslo Freedom Forum in Miami. We are just getting started. Just like with any regional forum we produce, we are featuring incredible programs and speakers with whom you can interact. So, as we head into our first intermission, we would like to take this opportunity to share with you some highlights of our interactive programming that you can all enjoy during the break. You'll see that we have on display a creative expo space detailing portraits of political prisoners created by artists from the Oslo Freedom Forum community. Each of these prisoners has been represented by HRF's legal team as part of our impact litigation program. Just outside the theater, you'll be able to see an exhibition by Chinese dissident artist Badi Chow and learn more about our Cuba Art Gallery. We've also set up an HRF bookstore and cafe where you can browse literature by current and former Oslo Freedom Forum speakers, as well as a banned books collection. Throughout this first session, you've been hearing calls to action from our activists and community members, and we encourage you to join the conversation on social media. Share your favorite moments from today using the hashtags OFF2021 and TruthIgnited. And if you've been moved by today's content and have questions for a speaker, seek them out now, or tag our Twitter account at OsloFF with a hashtag of the speaker's name and ask your questions there. We hope you enjoy meeting new people and learning more about our diverse community during this intermission. And we're excited to welcome you back here at 12 p.m. for the second session of today's theater programming and more opportunities to interact with other human rights defenders. See you then.
أنا آت إلى ظل عينيك آتي من خيام الزمان البعيد ومن لمعان السلاسل. أنت كل النساء اللواتي مات زواجهن وكل الثواكل. أنت العيون التي فر منها الصباح حين صارت تغاني البلابل ورقا يابسا في مهبل. أنا آتي 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 إلى ظل عينيك آتي. أنا آت إلى ظل عينيك آتي. أنت بيتي ومنفعي أنت أراضي التي دمرتني. أنت أراضي التي حولتني سماء. لست كوكبا طالعا من كتاب الأغاني عندما ارتج صوت المغني. لغة الدم حين تصير الشوارع غابة. لا تموتي على كرفات الأكابة. أنا آتي 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 إلى ظل عينيك آتي. أنا آت إلى ظل عينيك آتي مثل نسر يبيعون نار جراحه ويبيعون الوطن ثم فروا وتباهوا. لكن أنا آتي إلى ظل عينيك آتي. أنا آتي 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 إلى ظل عينيك آتي. Thank you. I'm really happy to be with you today. For the first song, it was from Mahmoud Darwish, a Palestinian poet. I'm coming to the shadow to your eyes, and now we're gonna present to you a poem from the 9th century from Hallaj, Oceans of Love, because it's always about love. Hope you will enjoy it. والله ما طلعت شمس ولا غربت إلا وحبك مقرون بأنفاسي ولا جلست إلى قوم نحدثهم إلا وأنت حديثي بين جلاسي ما زلت أطفو في بحار الهوى يرفعني الموج وانغضت فتارة يرفعني موجها وتارة وانغضت حتى إذا سيرني في الهوى إلى مكان ما لو شطوا ناديت يا من لم أبه باسمه ولم أخنه في الهوى قط ناديت يا من لم أبه باسمه ولم أخنه في الهوى قط والله ما طلعت شمس ولا غربت إلا ولا جلست إلى واسأل نجوم الليل هل زار الكرى جفني جفني وكيف يزور من لم يعرف لا غر وإن شحت بغمض جفونها عيني وبما جرى في موقف التوديع من ألم النوى شاهدت هول الموقف أفو لأنفاس النسيم تعلة ولوجه من نقلت شذاه تشوفي فلعل نار ودي نار حبي ألا تنطفي والله ما طلعت شمس ولا غربت إلا وحبك مقرون بأنفاسي ولا جلست إلى قوم أحدثهم إلا وأنت حديثي بين جلاسي يا والله ما طلعت شمس ولا غربت إلا إلا ولا جلست إلى قوم أحدثهم إلا وأنت حديثي بين جلاسي.
Good afternoon. I'm Gary Kasparov, chairman of Human Rights Foundation, and I'd like to introduce a very brave woman who became a symbol of resistance against dictatorship, not only in her native Belarus, but all around the world. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. Sviatlana, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So let's start from the very beginning. So you're, oh yeah, me or her? Me, Okay, I hope the mic, where's the mic? Somehow the mic actually dropped. It's this, you know what I tell you? Computers hate me. So I have to find a way. Let me keep it, that's okay? Good, thank you. So apology for this glitch. Let's start from the very beginning. Your unexpected entry into political life. Your husband last year decided to challenge Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko, who stayed in power for God knows how many years, 26 years. And then he was arrested, which is, again, common practice among dictators. But then something unexpected happened. You decided to step in. So tell us, what were your thoughts, emotions behind this very courageous decision?
Back I understand it was really kind of decision, but at that moment, I made it only for love to my husband, because he was doing such a great job. You know, he showed people the truth. He asked people about their lives, and I wanted to show him that he is important to me. What he's doing is important to me. So he was jailed. He didn't have an opportunity to run for presidency, and I brought my documents instead of him. At that moment, I was sure that Central Election Commission will not accept my documents because they knew who I am, but they did. They wanted to make laugh at me. They were sure nobody would vote for housewife without any political experience. And who knows, maybe it was the worst mistake.
The next stage, as you said, you didn't expect the documents to be accepted, but they did receive the documents, and they wanted to make you kind of, you know, just an easy target for a macho dictator. So to the contrary, so you run a campaign with two other brave women, with Valeria Tsepkalo and Maria Kolesnikova, who is, as probably you know now, sentenced for 11 years in jail. So for the crime of challenging Lukashenko, and her sister Tatiana is with us in this audience. So tell us about this creative campaign. 3 women against the macho dictator. And so what happened and how you managed to rally support of hundreds of thousands, no, millions of people who gave you their votes and gave you overwhelming victory in the elections?
You know, yeah, it was really powerful trio, and it happened unexpectedly for everyone. We haven't known each other before. But, you know, we didn't have illusions about elections. We understood that elections will be fraudulent. It only was a Soviet ritual. No one really counts votes. But team of Barbarika, they invented alternative counting of votes. And we were sure that with the help of these facts that we see that real numbers, you know, we will make regime understand that technologies came to our life, that we can prove that elections were fraudulent. And during this pre-election campaign, not only me or 2 women mobilized, all the Belarusians mobilized. And it was like about dignity of people. People woke up, they understood how many of us, people maybe first time for 27 years, saw eyes each other. They saw that there are millions of us who want changes, and we stopped discussing politics and regime in the kitchens behind the closed doors, but discussed this openly and freely, and it was like explosion in society. But everything was grassroots. People organized themselves. There was no one ruler who told, let's organize this, let's organize that. People did everything by themselves, and we were on the part of this movement.
Okay, so dictator lost elections. So there were different mathematical formulas that have been used to actually trying to calculate your result, which ranged, I think, from something 55 to 75%. But it was definitely a majority of votes that was cast to support you. So rigging elections for dictators, common practice. But something unexpected happened again. Hundreds of thousands of people filled the streets of Minsk and other cities in Belarus for weeks, for months, protesting, demanding the Lukashenko to step down. He didn't. So, and it was quite unfortunate, but this massive protest, I think we saw that 70% of the country, if not more, supported you and wanted election results to be recognized. Why this first phase of revolution, Belarus, failed?
I think, first of all, that you call it first phase of revolution, because some people often say that revolution failed. But you're correct, first phase failed. Maybe it isn't failed maybe, it's transformed into another form of revolution. But it was suppressed only because of violence and tortures in Belarus. You know, we really underestimated the cruelty of the regime. We were sure that there were hundreds of thousands of people on the streets show regime that, you know, people have changed. We are ready for changes. We want get rid of the regime. We want better future for our lives. But regime decided differently. They decided to use all the violence, all the possible violence against people. Since August, more than 35,000 people have been detained. Thousands of political prisoners at the moment. Hundreds of thousands had to flee the country because of repressions. So regime wanted, with the help of tortures, made people love or like regime again. But they failed. It's not us who failed. We transformed our resistance.
So you telling us that resistance continues. The people of Belarus, they are not going to accept the brutal, murderous rule of Lukashenko. So we saw recently one of the examples, the programmer, Arkady Zoltsov, who was active online, you know, posting blogs and just, you know, being engaged proactively in spreading word about crimes of the regime. He had been targeted by Lukashenko police, and KGB officers in civilian clothes tried to enter his apartment and arrest him. So he fought back. He shot and killed one of the intruders. And of course, he was killed by overwhelming fire. I believe he was a hero. So tell us about this new stage of resistance when people are so desperate that they just, you know, they don't want just to be arrested and tortured and harassed, and they want to fight back.
You know, in the country where there is absolute absence of law, where you don't know who is behind your doors, policemen or, you know, robbers, or who are these people in civil clothes, as you say. People are desperate. They know that in the jail, for sure, if those people are behind the doors, they will be jailed, and they will be tortured there. And all the family will be the target of these people. People, as you said, they are desperate. They are ready to defend themselves in different ways. Some choose leave the country, some choose hide somewhere, but not to be in jail. And this hero, he chose another way, but we really don't know the peculiarities of this situation. We have seen only one version, KGB version of this shooting. But of course, I have to say that it's tragedy, where we have two victims. And, you know, only regime is guilty in this situation, not Andrei for sure. And we must assure that proper investigation will happen according to this situation. You know, but of course it's horrible situation, you know.
Okay, but now the situation on the ground in Belarus is horrible, and Lukashenko shows no signs of making any concessions. It's getting worse and worse. Now, what about the rest of the world? So we heard many words, blah, 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 that's, you know, condemnations. Do you think that international community, let's first talk about the leadership of the free world, has been doing enough to put pressure on Lukashenko with sanctions and other acts that could weaken the regime?
I really believe that European society and the USA and the UK want to do a lot to help Belarusian people. But it's a pity that institutions, organizations that work in democratic societies can't work properly with dictatorships. But it doesn't mean that we should stop. Belarusian people can't stop because we have no choice. And I think that European society also have to be creative, They have to be stronger, braver in taking decisions. And of course, we need three major things. We need solidarity, first of all. We need pressure on the regime, and we need justice. Because solidarity is important to keep Belarusian people continue they resist. We need assistance to media and civil society. We need access to internet, we need anti-censorship tools, and we need Belarus' own agenda. And it's also important to look into future Belarus, and macro aid that was proposed by Europe was very well accepted by Belarusians. I mean, comprehensive plan for Belarus.
But
as for pressure, pressure.
Yeah, good. Go ahead. What's the pressure? I want to hear, what is to be done, because right now, again, it's a lot of, wishful thinking. What is to be done? Tell us.
So, diplomatic and targeted sanctions. Sanctions work. Sanctions allow to split elites. Sanctions stop. Stop businesses deal with Lukashenko, because after fourth package of sanctions, we started to receive phone calls from businesses that are around Lukashenko, just asking, how can we help you? How can we avoid sanctions? So businesses don't want to share responsibility with the regime for the crimes they committed. So don't let regime to abuse international institutions. Like some people are stopped by police in different countries because Interpol, because regime misuse Interpol in this regard. And of course, we should recognize the regime as criminal, because what's going on in Belarus is terrorism against a nation. So we have to use every institution, just maybe a little bit more creative that you are used to do, but the situation is non-conventional, and maybe we have to use non-conventional approach.
Sviatlana is very diplomatic, so I should not be. Yeah, and she talks about creativity. It's about political will. It's about to overcome political impotence of the free world. They can ruin Lukashenko regime. And by the way, the regime, as they talk, Lukashenko receives, help from Putin. And while, they say Putin is too dangerous, he has nuclear weapon. Lukashenko does not have it. And the sanctions, unfortunately, we all know. Again, you're diplomatic, I understand why. But it's just, it's a joke. They should, and I hope they would, do something to ruin Lukashenko regime. But it's not only, this is not only about leadership of the free world. It's not only about business community. It's also about media. CNN, you're here, you're listening to us. What about the shameful interviews with Lukashenko? How on earth you could call him Mr. President? It's a murderous dictator. By calling him Mr. President, you ignore the will of people of Belarus. The words matter. The words matter. And again, we should thank President-elect of Belarus, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, for joining us at Oslo Freedom Forum. Thank you very much, Sviatlana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. The Belarus Solidarity Fund has been one of HRF's most successful programs this past year. Together with Belarusian diaspora communities all over the world, we've raised over $850,000 for journalists, activists, striking factory workers, and repressed peaceful protesters. We are so inspired by the courage and resilience of people in Belarus, who every day have to face even small acts of oppression for small acts, such as giving a college graduation speech condemning police brutality or wearing clothing of the wrong color. The Human Rights Foundation will continue to use our platform to champion the cause of democracy in Belarus and to spotlight activists and dissidents who stand up for freedom. We know there is still a long way to go, but now more than ever, Belarusians need your help. I hope you will join us and take action. Visit BelarusSolidarityFund.com. I know that with time and solidarity, we will win. Thank you very much.
I was born in Urumqi, the capital city of the Uyghur homeland. My homeland is among China's most ethnically diverse region. It is home to about 11 million Uyghur who speak their own language and have their own distinct culture. It was in school where the brainwashing from the Chinese Communist Party began. We were brainwashed about how great the Chinese Communist Party was by seeing without the Communist Party, there would be no new China. At that time, Uyghurs were already living under oppression. But during that time, as a child, my life was happy and carefree. I had a close relationship with my mother, Rahila Dawood, who is my inspiration and motivation. She is my mentor in everything, life, study, and work. My mother values education and wants me to see the world. That's why I came to the United States after I finished my undergraduate degree in China. I wasn't involved in politics. I didn't have much understanding of the political issue. I didn't even open Twitter. The only time I went on platforms such as Facebook or YouTube was to watch funny cat videos. I talked to my mother every day. Some days we couldn't help but spend more than 1 hour talking to each other. My mother worries about me living here in a foreign country alone and wants to know all about my daily life. I also love talking to her because she is smart and humorous. It was December 12, 2017. I first lost contact with her. I remember vividly. I was scared at first. I anxiously asked my family members the whereabouts of my mothers. At first, they just found an excuse to comfort me by saying, "Your mother has an important things to do and she will return soon." But later on, I knew she was detained. That deeply shocked me at first. I was supposed to do many things at that time, but I cannot get out of my bed because of fear and depression. I gradually collected myself and did daily functions such as going to work, cooking, and studying, but my fear and depression stayed. Because of my naive hope for the Chinese government, I somehow had the hope that she might be released soon. And I naively wait for that day to come. That hope gradually vanished after I read more news about Uyghurs. The truth shocked me to an extent that you will never understand. China is committing an unprecedented crime against humanity, against the Uyghur population and the other Muslim groups in our homeland. Human rights groups believe China has detained millions of Uyghurs over the past few years into the so-called re-education camp and sentenced countless people to the prison terms. That includes my innocent mother, Rahila Dawood. The conditions of those camps were horrible. Former camps detainees have given testimony that they were tortured and sexually abused happened in those camps. Uyghurs were forced out of their homes to work for factories that supply major global brands. China's alleged actions towards Uyghurs have violated every single provision in the United Nations Genocide Convention. As an Uyghur, I know how risky and life-threatening it is for us to get into political affairs. We can be easily labeled as separatists or terrorists even though we have never done anything unlawful. Now I realize it's not about the loyalty to the Chinese government. Your loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party is not going to save you. I decided to break my silence because I lost hope for the Chinese government. I decided to break my silence because if anything happened to my mother, I won't forgive myself. I decided to break my silence because I began to read and hear stories and I realized we are experiencing a systematic genocide. This was life-changing for me. Today, I am an activist standing here to fight for justice for my mother and all the Uyghurs that are currently being imprisoned. Activism is a long journey. Because of my activism, I cannot go back to my homeland anymore. If I go back, I will also be imprisoned. But I am luckier than all the Uyghurs that are currently suffering in camp and the prison. The world must take action because in the past, we said never again after the Holocaust. But now, we are letting the genocide happen again. Governments and human rights organizations must take immediate and urgent actions to protect Uyghurs. In the past, people doubt the existence of the concentration camp and deny that Uyghurs are suffering. But now, with all the evidence, with all the tearful testimonies from the victims, with all the testimonies from the devastated children like me who are looking for their parents, we don't have any excuse to say we don't know what's happening to Uyghurs. All of you here can and must contribute to the fight against this atrocity. Whether you are a government official, a journalist, or a person just like me, my sincere suggestion would be to please try your best to spread the word. You can share an article on your social media. You can tell your friends and families and inform them about the issue. Don't buy clothing made with Uyghur forced labor. Also, please sign the petition related to the Uyghur genocide. It would only take 1 minute, but it can save life. Please help me to save my mother and all the Uyghurs that are suffering. Thank you.
When I decided to leave, I was so worried because I didn't know whether my name was put on the blacklist. When the plane was flying to the night sky, I looked down to the city, and that was probably the very last eyesight that I could catch on the beautiful cityscape of Hong Kong. I come to an emotional rush. It was just so real for me that I'm unable to visit my family, my friends, and all the protest sites that mean so much to Hong Kong people, including myself.
July 1st, 2020 may be the day Hong Kong's autonomous bubble finally burst.
Critics say this is the end of one country.
Holding a new national security. I'm Nathan Law, a Hong Kong democratic activist now exiled in London.
I first learned about Nathan during the 2014 Umbrella Movement, when Nathan was just a student leader at the forefront with Joshua Wong. What Hong Kongers were asking for was just simply, one vote, one person, the ability to pick their own leader.
To understand what the Umbrella Movement was about, we have to understand Hong Kong's historical context. It was a British colony since the middle of the 19th century until 1997, when the British and Chinese governments agreed to the transfer of Hong Kong's sovereignty under something called one country, two systems that was supposed to guarantee a move toward democracy.
So Hong Kong is just constantly in this state of flux, in this state of uncertainty, where no one really knows what's going to happen and what's going to happen to the people of Hong Kong.
Hong Kong people got so politicized and worry about their future, because when we look back to the past 3 decades, it was so clear the way that the Chinese Communist Party could sacrifice its people in order to retain in power. I was elected as the youngest parliamentarian in Hong Kong at the age of 23 in 2016.
He helped start something, and that something was the awakening of an entire generation of Hong Kongers to fight for our freedom.
We are a generation of protest. But in 2017, I was unseated in just 9 months after I resumed office, and also jailed because of my participation in the Umbrella Movement.
Going to prison can change a person a lot. His identity these days is much less about, demonstrating on the street, but much more about contextualizing Hong Kong and having that international perspective. Beijing has long been trying to find ways to suppress Hong Kong's civil society. They decided that in order to completely eradicate Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement, they would need to do something drastic.
The National Security Law was passed on June 30th, 2020, and no one had seen the text of the bill before it was passed, including the government of Hong Kong. But the National Security Law effectively criminalized dissent. And it was so vague and so sweeping that overnight people just became really scared of crossing the line, because no one knew where the line was anymore. And under the language of the bill, really anything could be a crime.
Every one of us democratic campaigners would face legal persecution or even lifelong imprisonment. So I decided to flee to speak up for Hong Kong on the international level.
We know for a fact that China has worked very hard to woo other countries, especially developing countries, trying to basically buy allies. There's a good number of countries in the world that are more than happy to toe the Chinese government's line in terms of what's going on in Hong Kong, or what's happening even to the Uyghurs or the Taiwanese and the Tibetans, etc. Hong Kong's story is reflective of something broader, I think, what's going on in the world today. And it is a battle between democracy and authoritarianism.
That's why I've been campaigning for alliance with all the democratic countries, that they should stand up together and to place human rights as their front and center policy and to work over it with a global agenda.
Now that he's living full-time in London, he's meeting with members of the parliament, and I expect that he will continue to do much more in the days to come.
In just a year, in the UK, they stopped adopting Huawei as a 5G infrastructure. They declare that the Chinese government breached signed the British Law Declaration for multiple times. They're offering the BNO scheme for people facing political suppression in Hong Kong. They're uplifting the extradition treaty with Hong Kong, they're extending the arms embargo, they are putting higher scrutiny on Chinese state enterprise, they're decreasing reliance on China's economy. And I think these are the changes that we need.
He's definitely the most prominent voice in the Hong Kong democracy movement who's not in jail. So it's kind of on his shoulders. And I think him and the few other activists who were able to leave Hong Kong, their focus is on international advocacy now.
I have no way to back off. I just have to continue to tell their stories and to speak up for the demands of Hong Kong.
光復香港！光復香港！
Nearly all my friends and comrades in Hong Kong are either in jail or in exile. The national security law introduced to Hong Kong last year has dismantled the civil society and trashed the values of our city's foundation. The Chinese Communist Party is taking away our basic rights as human beings. Press freedom, rule of law, electoral democracy, rights to assembly and protest, rights to bail, and freedom from fear, all of which are taken away from us overnight. The tactics used to tear apart Hong Kong is lurking behind the idea of national sovereignty. And such tactics are being replicated across democracies and autocracy over the planet. The fall of Hong Kong does not only concern Hong Kongers, but every freedom-loving people in the planet. We Hong Kongers will continue to fight. We urge you to join us in this journey because we have to win this battle. In solidarity, we will win humanity back.
So what can concerned global citizens like you and I do? More than you think. HRF's Hong Kong desk and Chinese Communist Party Disruption Initiative aim to expose the many ways how the Chinese government is a threat to global freedoms. Areas of focus include the rise of digital authoritarianism, corporate intimidation, the trampling of freedoms in Hong Kong, the Uyghur genocide, the severe stifling of freedoms in Tibet, the crackdown on Chinese human rights activists, and the threats to a democratic Taiwan. Through creative campaigns and public awareness, HRF aims to spread awareness about these abuses and to hold the Chinese government accountable. Here at the Human Rights Foundation, we remain committed to protecting and promoting human rights where they are most at risk. Together, we must continue these conversations and to ignite the truth.
I fell in love with Felix 20 years ago. We got married in the mountains of northern Nicaragua, where we both grew up. He captivated me with his charm, his intelligence, and his unwavering love for Nicaragua. Here we are with our daughter, Alejandra. She is now 8 years old, and Felix's mother. This was the last picture we took in person in 2019. And this is the last picture taken of Felix from June 8, 2021. I have not seen him since. From that day, few blocks away from where this picture was taken, Felix's car was intercepted. He was pulled out of the car, beaten, kidnapped, and disappeared by the National Police of Nicaragua. For 84 days, we didn't know anything about Felix, anything about his well-being, where he was held. We didn't even know if he was alive. And it's so sad to say that Felix is not alone. There are more than 140 political prisoners in Nicaragua. Today marks 118 days since Felix has been in El Chipote prison. Then, on August 31st, some of the political prisoners were allowed to see their family members. Felix's sister saw him for 20 minutes. And from that visit, we learned that Felix and other political prisoners were suffering from psychological and physical torture. Felix has lost more than 25 pounds and others more than 30 in just 3 months. The lights in their cells are kept on 24/7, and they are subjected to daily interrogations. Some of the political prisoners are so weak they cannot even walk in their own. And the women that are in jail are completely isolated. They are being tortured. And we fear for their lives. We fear they can die. This is a very emotional moment for me, because my husband, Felix Maradiaga, was in this same stage in 2019. He called his speech raising the Nicaragua's flag. And today, I bring the same flag before you with the same urgent message about the terrible situation that we are living in Nicaragua. I'm here to speak on his behalf and ask all of you to make his message resonate and grow. As he said during his speech, hundreds of Nicaraguans have been shot, disappeared, imprisoned, or killed just for raising this flag. Today, he's one of them, jailed by the Ortega's regime because of his commitment of freedom, justice, and democracy. The government's repression followed by the protest in Nicaragua in 2018 has caused severe and permanent damage to the country and its citizens. In August of this year, Ortega banned all the independent political parties. They persecute the opposition, including 7 presidential candidates that are in prison right now. By silencing the media, criminalizing protest, the regime is just seem to do whatever they want. They also banned the oldest print newspaper in the country. Today, like Cuba, Nicaragua doesn't even have an independent print newspaper. And as I said, by silencing the media, criminalizing protest, the regime is staging a brutal attack on the truth. And as the November 7 presidential election draws near, the attacks are just getting worse. And knowing all of this, I would like you to tell me if any one of you consider these so-called elections to be legitimate. With the help of dictatorship like Venezuela and Russia and some local elites, Ortega amassed a huge fortune, which made him and his wife, now the vice president of Nicaragua, seem invincible. To cover for its crime, the regime has created a narrative declaring that anyone who dares to question their repression and their policies as a villain and a traitor. Their brutality is masked by an immense web of lies repeated by the media they control. The charges against my husband, Felix Maradiaga, are part of an immense web of lies. They are part of illegal laws that are passed by the National Assembly, controlled by the regime, to silence independent media, the opposition, and any type of dissent. Actually, in July of this year, the Ortega regime accused me for being a traitor of the homeland, just because I was advocating for the release of Felix and the other political prisoners. For many years, Felix has been speaking out in Nicaragua and abroad, denouncing that Ortega posed a severe threat to our democracy. And we have seen him consolidate his power and his abuse of our human rights. Now we are living the nightmare my husband warned about many years ago. The international community can no longer remain silent, letting dictators like Ortega do whatever they want. I ask you today not to forget the political prisoners like my husband that are in jail in Nicaragua. As Felix says, in order for nonviolence to be successful, we need international solidarity. We need attention from the world. And today, I would like to ask you to engage, to keep the pressure in the Ortega's regime, to free the political prisoners and restore democracy in Nicaragua. Thank you very much. ¡Viva Nicaragua libre!
I have hope, because without hope it is impossible to live.
Václav Havel, the poet, the playwright, the dreamer, the revolutionary.
The Václav Havel Prize for Creative Dissent.
Because dissenting is the best verb to conjugate liberty.
This award is hope and a message to those voices that are out there that no one is speaking for them.
Dictatorship is not a political issue. It is a moral issue.
Governments and dictatorships are so scared of art.
They want to close my mouth because I choose the most peaceful tool to criticize them. I choose poetry, verses, words.
Theater has got power. We have got power to provoke emotions and start debate immediately.
So I would like to dedicate this award for the voiceless.
Even though we may be going through great darkness, it's up to us to realize that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Václav Havel said, "Hope is not the conviction that things will turn out right, but the certainty that what we do without caring what the result will be."
And we together can change our society.
No more technical glitches this time. For all of us who was born on the wrong side of Iron Curtain, I mean east of Iron Curtain, Václav Havel was one of the brightest symbols of intellectual vigor and moral resistance to communist dictatorship. During his remarkable life, Václav Havel has played many roles. He was a Democrat, devoted to the cause of freedom and human rights. He was a dissident, fighting communist regime in Czechoslovakia, and he was spending years in jail for that. He was a very successful statesman as the first president of new independent Czech Republic. He was also a famous poet, playwright, and a philosopher. But above all, he was a truth teller. In his essay, The Power of the Powerless, he described the concept of living in truth. That is, unwavering commitment to living according to one's belief in democracy and civil liberty. Our theme this year, Truth Ignited, strongly resonates with Havel's idea. At our Freedom Forum, we celebrate powerful stories that spark actions around the world in service of truth. Tomorrow is Václav Havel's birthday. Today, we honor his legacy by amplifying the voices of those who speak truth to power no matter the personal cost, and awarding the Václav Havel Prize for Creative Dissent to activists who creatively unmask the deception of dictatorship. Last year, as you know, we had to cancel our event in Oslo. And as a result, we awarded our prize virtually to 3 laureates. Saudi's political satirist, Omar Abdulaziz, Rwandan singer and peace and reconciliation activist, Kizito Mihigo, who received this prize posthumously because he was killed in prison by Rwanda's dictator henchmen, and Chinese dissident artist Badu Chao. For Badu Chao, this perilous journey into the living in truth began at early age, when as a teenager, he realized the fanatical level of censorship around the 1989 Tiananmen massacre. Instead of becoming a lawyer, a reputable and safe job, he became an artist. Far less rewarding, but far more dangerous career choice in communist China. He is well known for his political cartoons that are widely shared on Twitter. For years, his artwork has revealed the heinous crimes of Chinese communist regime, rallied support for Hong Kong pro-democracy movement, advocated on behalf of political prisoners in China, and lately helped to expose the lies of Chinese government about COVID-19 pandemic. In a dictatorship, this kind of courageous activism often comes up with a very steep price. And not surprisingly, he was not eager to reveal his identity and decided to appear in public wearing a ski mask that covered his face. But that all changed in 2019 when he bravely decided to reveal his true identity. Now, of course, he lives in Australia in exile. But his artwork still remains at the forefront of spreading awareness about never-ending humorous abuses in China, Hong Kong, Tibet, Uyghur region. Furthermore, beyond China, his art has shined a spotlight on pro-democracy demonstrations in Burma and Thailand. Let me emphasize what we all know. Protest art can galvanize and sustain a movement. And this Václav Havel Prize for Creative Dissent laureate has made history by inspiring countless millions of people to keep their hopes, their faith in democracy and freedom alive. So let's give the warmest welcome to Badu Chao.
It's such a pleasure and honor to be here and talking to everyone here. Firstly, please allow me to thank you, Gary, to give me this extraordinary prize. I'd like to actually, this prize would be extraordinarily meaningful to me, because it's actually, the shape of it is inspired by the very statue that in 1989, when the Chinese students and citizens are doing this massive protest against Chinese government. And I like to call a proposal to Gary, actually, if he will be so kind to teach me how to play chess and beating Xi Jinping. I would like to teach him how to draw a satire cartoon against Putin. In 1989, as you see, there's massive people are doing the protest there. But this history and this period of truth are wiped by the Chinese government. I think today we have seen about truth is exactly the time that I want to share in this very unique story about Tiananmen massacre and about how it influenced people today. So on the 4th of June, the Chinese government sending the soldiers cracking down the students. As you can see from the pictures, there's fire behind, there's machine guns in their hands, there are tanks on the street, crushing students and civilians. And the very next day, there's no more protests on the square or in the street of Beijing, but soldiers with machine guns on this deadly, empty square. It is a sad moment. The funny thing is, there is this TV reality celebrity and politician from American once called the Chinese government action is actually power of strength. And I assume the Chinese government just think the same. So they create a very special batch of watch that they use the watch as a prize to giving the killer soldier to show the strength of power. However, after a couple of days, they realize this is not a symbol for strength or power. This is the criminal evidence that in the future, we can put Chinese government into the court to prove the brutality against humanity. And they realize it, and they starting to censor all the information about the Tiananmen massacre, or in their words, a cracking down to keep China peaceful. But this watch is taken away from the history. It is so rare that we only see the photos. We never get a chance to see the real object. So I did a cartoon to telling the world what this watch really means. It is soaked in blood. A couple months ago, there is an auction house in London called the Fellows. They actually find a watch, and they're going to throw an auction on this object. I have a very complex feeling for this very thing. So when I go through their website, I'm shocked, sad, raged, because there's not enough respect to a historic object like that. On their website, there is a male model wearing a watch just like he is wearing a Rolex. For me, this is over the line. So I post about this auction on Twitter and other social media. Then a lot of people is echoing with my calling. Then there's media coverage from BBC and Guardian. There's a public backlash against it. So the auction house decided to withdraw the selling. It is a good thing, because I think object like this deserves proper treatment. It is not object for profit, but for public well-being, for the memory, the least thing that we should forget. Not just for Chinese, but everyone around the world, because human rights are universal. But for me, this is good, but that's not good enough, because I want to have the watch that we Chinese didn't want to have the watch so we can present it properly, restore it properly, so we can tell the story. The Chinese government tried its best to let people forget about it. I emailed the auction house. I say, I and my fellow dissident will be willing to pay whatever the price that you name. We just want the watch. We can get it privately. We understand you may be doing business in China, but the watch means so much. Would you consider private sale? And we will meet your price. The auction house said no, 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 because they do not want to get into this anymore. Because they want to use this PR strategy to silence it. Because they know it potentially will jeopardize the Chinese market. Or they just want to keep distance from political matters. This is a very coward action, irresponsible. And I was so sad that day that it's good that we stopped the auction, but it's bad that maybe this very important evidence will lost in the strain of the history forever. But something miracle happened. There's another guy. He read about an article from The Guardian, and he said, I just have a same watch. And he posted it on Twitter. So I followed up again. I messaged him, sir, I'm a Chinese dissident artist. You know, this watch means so much for my people because we can use it to prove the massacre. We do not want it for economic profit. We want it for public well-being. We want to remember the massacre. Would you be so kind to sell the watch to us? We would like to pay whatever the price you name. And that gentleman replied me, okay, this is meaningful. I will give you this free. Give me the address. I'll mail it to you tomorrow. This is extraordinary, generous, courage, but also inspiring. So the next day, I have the watch. And today, I'll be able to take it here and show you. This is the end of this story. But I just want to share it because I think it reflects so many aspects of our society today. We have authoritarian government committed horrible crime, and they try to hide it, wipe it off from the history. We also have very greedy organizations, companies, corporations, not just from China, but also from the West, who do not really care about the history or respect to the human rights, but making a profit. And this does not just refer to the auction house. It is also about all the companies that making a profit in China with forced labor from Uyghur community and more. But what is more important is that individual in the end, he used his generosity, his kindness to change this circumstance so that I can bring the watch today and share the story. And I believe that person is also everyone here on the stage and on the audience seat. They're coming here to listen to me. That gives me hope, motivation. So thank you for coming here. Lastly, I want to represent this new body of work, which is a 5-paint posters that are against the Beijing Olympic next year. From this work, you will see all the crime against humanity from the Chinese government. From the total surveillance on its own citizen to the COVID virus spreading to the world because it's early censorship, to what it has been done to the Tibetan community, and also to the Hong Kong community and Uyghur community. I want to share this work with you. And I want everyone to actually own the image, that it is for free, and you can just scan it and download all the image, so that you can continue the story and share the story with your friends, family, community. And that's how we can make a change as individuals. And very soon, I hope to drop this body of image as NFT, so that I can have more support to bring this body of work to more cities, to let more people to knowing the story behind. Thank you.
Barry. I am a health coach, and I've been working with Thor Halverson for many years. How are you guys? You guys have been in your seats forever. You've been sitting down forever. I want you guys to be able to take all of this amazing knowledge that you are receiving this day and be able to use it. The way you can use it is by making your body healthy and strong. So please get up for me. Please stand up out of your seats and let's move a little bit, you guys. You've been given the gifts of freedom. You've been given the gifts of your body. Please use them now. Okay, so watch out for your neighbor. I'm gonna have you guys move a little bit. This first thing I want you to do is take your neck in a bit of a circle. You guys are brilliant. Let me know, are you guys enjoying this day today? Yeah. That was about a level 3. Have you guys been enjoying this day today? Opposite direction, opposite direction. You guys, I want you to use your voices with me today. Swim backwards. Watch your neighbors. Swim backwards. If you want the people of this world to be free, say yes. Yes. That was like a level 4. If you want the people of this world to be free, say yes. Yes. That's it. Last time, but say it like you mean it. Swim forward. If you want the people of this world to be free, say yes. Yes. That's it. Beautiful. Open and close your arms. Watch out. This is an opportunity to smack somebody, so please be careful and don't do that. All right? You guys, tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning, if you saw us out there this morning, twist side to side. If you saw us this morning, we had movement like this and meditation. Brilliant meditation to heal your past. Meditation to bring you into mindfulness of the present. Beautiful meditation to send beauty and well-being into your future. Upper body in a circle around your lower body. If you want to be able to have that movement and be able to have that meditation in the morning tomorrow at 8:30, meet me right out in front of this New World Center, okay? It's going to be a beautiful time. Opposite direction, opposite direction. You guys are almost home, okay? You guys are amazing. Doesn't it feel good to move your body, right? Body weight squats, a few body weight squats. Yes, let those legs know they're alive and they're healthy. You guys, I could not be more grateful for your time today. The New World Center wants you to know that if you're not eating or drinking, please wear your mask, okay? We're gonna do our very best to keep the spread of anything. So definitely wear your mask if you're not eating or drinking. You guys are fantastic. Well, I want you to do one thing for 5 seconds like you mean it, you guys. For 5 seconds like you mean it. I want you to celebrate your life. 3, 2, 1, yes! That's it, you guys. Beautiful. Beautiful. I will see you guys at 8:30 in the morning tomorrow and here throughout the day. Be well. Blessings.
Everyone, we got one more announcement for you. Please take a seat. We won't be that long. I got 2 very special people out here. Hi, everybody. You might know me. I'm Alex Gladstein of the Human Rights Foundation. I've got my friend Fode Diop from Senegal here, and Elizabeth Stark, an incredible entrepreneur. And we have some interactive programming for you this afternoon. And some of you might have some questions. about why there is a Bitcoin section for you this afternoon. And we just wanted to connect the dots quickly to explain why. I think a lot of people don't understand the connection between Bitcoin and human rights, but right now, millions of people in dictatorships in Iran, in Venezuela, in Russia, in Turkey, in Togo, are using Bitcoin as an alternative currency to escape whether it's frozen bank accounts, currency debasement, you know, like sanctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People are using it to get free. There are countless countries out there, Afghanistan, China, Belarus, Cuba, Nigeria. We want to invite you up to the Bitcoin programming if you're interested in learning more. It runs from 2 to 6 today and tomorrow. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to allow Fode to tell you a little personal story about why freedom money matters to him.
All right, so can you guys hear me? All right, so my name is Fode Diop. I was born and raised in Senegal in West Africa. And in '94, I was supposed to come to the United States and go to college in Kansas. And unfortunately, that same year, our currency got devaluated by 50%, which means that overnight, the entire money that my parents, especially my dad, saved for me to go to college was cut by half because for some reason, we are an ex-French colony, and France decided overnight that they were going to devaluate our money to help us maybe sell our products better in an international market. But it wasn't that way. And I believe that today, the problem persists with 15 countries in West Africa, where, with 50 countries actually in West Africa, and we have to get from under the French, unfortunately. I don't have anything against French people, but I do have a problem with the French government because they are perpetuating this problem in West Africa, and I believe that actually it's time for us to get from underneath them. And to me, Bitcoin solves this particular problem. Bitcoin is permissionless, and it allows for us, West Africans, to regain our freedom and to actually, again, regain our sovereignty from the French financial colonialism. And that's why I invite you all to maybe come tomorrow, and maybe we can talk about it more at the Bitcoin Academy.
Fode will be...
Thank you.
Woo! Fode will be presenting at 2 o'clock upstairs. And I just wanted to show you something. You might have seen that Twitter added Bitcoin recently. So this is like a short video that I took of me donating to the Human Rights Foundation very quickly over something called the Lightning Network. So I just went to the money button, I clicked it, I chose $1, I went to my own wallet on my phone that's completely unconnected from the financial system, and I sent $1 of Bitcoin with a nice little note to thank my colleagues at the Human Rights Foundation. And it just immediately transferred and was a final settlement. And the cool part is anyone around the world now can make a donation to HRF from anywhere in the world with a cell phone without needing to be part of the financial system. And it's done through something called the Lightning Network. Elizabeth's company has been like one of the key innovators in building it. So I wanted her to come up here and just tell you a little more about the Lightning Network.
Thanks, Alex. First of all, human rights is an area that's near and dear to my heart. I worked on this as a grad student, and part of what got me interested in both Bitcoin and Lightning is the ability to have access for all. Some people think that Bitcoin does not scale. They think it's slow, they think it can only do a few transactions per second, but what they don't know is there's an entire community of passionate developers working on this technology called the Lightning Network that is free, it's open, it's permissionless, and it's global. It's a software layer that operates on top of Bitcoin that enables instant high-volume transactions, and anybody can build upon it. So today we have incredible entrepreneurs, for example, one named Bernard in Nigeria, Ghana, some folks in Guatemala, people may have heard of what's going on in El Salvador, that don't need permission, they're building on top of this new financial system. And they're young, they're passionate, and they're re-envisioning how to bring freedom to people around the world. So many people today, as we know, we've heard, live under authoritarian regimes, have currency debasement, hyperinflation, forced conversion by governments. And both Bitcoin and Lightning enable people to build on top of this in an open, permissionless way, such that people can create new applications, create access to financial products, hold the money, and then very importantly with Lightning, transact, donate, make a living, spend money in a way where they're not encumbered by the existing system that's going to surveil people or have a variety of ways where people do not have access today. And I know I'm going to be talking about this later with Alex at 3:30, and really the way that I think about it is we have an opportunity to rebuild our system to make it more free, more open and to bring access to people that don't previously have it. And this is our goal in the community of the Lightning Network and working on Bitcoin.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's amazing work. You should check out what Lightning Labs is doing. Now we release you to lunch. I just wanted to point out that you can grab the box lunch in the atrium. You can head outside to the park to eat. We have a room called the Rise Room you can eat, and you can come up to the roof and hang out with us, where we're going to start our programming at 2. Thank you all so much. Go Freedom.